So, Michelle,
So, David,
picture a pocket knife, all right?
a Swiss one?
Well, not that good.
Okay.
Right. Actually, I want you to picture a pocket knife. It used to be all the rage when I was a kid.
Same.
One that had a spoon on one side and a fork on the other side. And
No
then
spork?
No. It was a spoon on one, it's like one on the outside of one side.
So it wasn't all in one, like a spork?
No, it wasn't all in one. It had a fork and it had a spoon and the knife, of course, which folded in.
Okay.
Now, here's the problem with that pocket knife. How to use the knife and the fork at the same time.
Oh, you just keep flipping the ends.
Well, but hang on, if you want to hold the piece of steak and then cut it, you need to get another knife.
This is why we needed the Swiss to come in and help us out.
Well, this is the thing. That pocket knife is a little bit like the Australian Defence Force at the moment.
Okay.
All right. So we've just had this little thing. I don't know. No one was talking about it whatsoever
No.
just before Anzac Day.
I didn't.
The Defence Strategic Review.
I know.
And, it's got defence and strategic, and there is a little bit of intelligence and security in there. So
Yes.
I thought, shall we do what everyone else has been doing in our own special and very important way and just break this thing down? And see
Let's
what's going on?
break it down.
Let's break down the Australian Defence Force.
Can't wait. You're listening to I Spied, the multi-tool of Australian intelligence.
Do you need a can opener?
No.
What about a knife?
No.
A saw?
No.
Toothpick?
No.
Pen?
No.
Magnifying glass?
Yes.
Tweezers?
Yes.
Spanner?
No.
Multi-phase internal combustion engine?
Yes. Yes.
You going to drive out of here?
Bye.
Bye.
Hello and welcome to I Spy. My name's Michelle Stevenson. I'm here with David Callan and we're going to pull apart the Defence Strategic Review. Now, if you missed it, this was a review kind of like the first big review of its kind since World War II.
Well, pretty much, yeah. It's the most sweeping change we've had.
Yes, and I have to say it's something that has not been done, of course, in such a long time, but it's interesting that we're now really taking strategic defence seriously.
Yeah.
Well, any kind of defence seriously.
Considering it's one of the big ticket items in our budget, it's kind of, it was remiss of us to sort of just let it bubble on the way it has.
Yes, well, because we did have the AUKUS stuff but kind of bubbling along.
Yeah.
And so now they've decided to go, hang on, maybe we should look at everything else. And what successive governments have done over the years is, and we've spoken about this quite a bit, is kind of like privatise huge chunks and huge swathes of our defence forces.
Yeah, now that was one of the things that came out in the review when I
Yeah.
looked at the personnel in the review. This is just we're going to be jumping around a bit on this one,
Yeah,
but
of
they
course.
basically said that the core of defence is actually contractors.
Yes.
It's not, soldiers, sailors and pilots.
No, not anymore.
It's contractors. Now, that's a little bit concerning.
Of course. And, this government is now promising to spend $19 billion, a little less on the army.
Well, we are. What we need to do is we need to go through and break it all down.
You
right?
break it all down.
But,
where do you want to start?
Well, where I want to start is why we need to do this, right? And it's a really important point, is the Australian Defence Force at the moment is not fit for purpose, and that was brought out.
And that's exactly what they said. It's not fully fit for purpose.
Not fully fit for purpose. And I mean, one of the big things is Australia is, look, I don't want to sound rude and I do not want to besmirch our defence personnel, but in a sense, the Australian Defence Force has literally become a life support system for special operations.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things that was really popular with Australian forces in both the Iraq wars and Afghanistan was our special forces, the SAS and their ilk, right? To the point where the Australian Army actually went, let's completely rejig the way we do our special forces, and which has left us with this problem with war crimes and all the stuff that's going on at the moment with special forces. But literally everything that we did seemed to be surrounding that special operations, which is projecting a small, very highly trained force into a far-away, far-flung region.
Yeah, and also that our alliance partner, the US, who's no longer kind of the unipolar leader. It's more, you've got the rise of China. You've got all that. So a lot of what we were basing our defense strategy on was on kind of old school global politics.
Uncle Sam. Our favourite uncle.
Yeah, we need you.
Uncle Sam would basically be there to help us out if anything goes wrong.
Yes.
Because no one's going to threaten Uncle Sam. Russia was gone. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and suddenly they are the hegemonic power on the planet.
Yes.
And then this little country called I like the way everyone has skirted around this by going, it's a country that starts with C and ends with A, and every time they do that, I go, Colombia. It's like, it's the cocaine trade we've got to fight. Yeah. China has spent the last 2 decades going, hang on, we're an economic power. Let's make ourselves a military power because we want to control our neighbourhood. So they've claimed the South China Sea.
Yeah.
They've built their little islands, their lovely military resorts, I like to call them. Serve on an island.
Yep.
And basically, the rest of the world has gone, hang on a second, we weren't expecting this. And now the US, with its own problems, it's got a lot of internal problems. Because of that, everyone's like going, hang on, what's going to happen next? And the Albanese government went, maybe we should look at our Army, Air Force and Navy and see what the hell is going on.
Yep.
And here we are. Here we are with the Strategic Reserve.
Yeah, and now the review said there was only, this was really important, that there's only remote possibility of any power contemplating an invasion of our continent.
Now, invading Australia...
No one wants to do it.
It's possible. You can do it. But you're looking at a minimum from the outset of your campaign, you're looking at least 2 years before you make footfall on Australia.
Yes.
And there was one great strategy that someone said is everyone's going to think they're going to come through Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, right? That was the big thing. They're going to come down through that archipelago, where one guy actually said that, no, actually what would be smart is to come all the way down and take Norfolk Island.
Yeah.
And then do to Norfolk Island what they've done in the South China Sea, create a base so you've got a short jump. Now, if they were to say, get to a point where they've turned around to Papua New Guinea and gone, hey, we'd really like to build you a military base. Oh, by the way, can we borrow it to invade Australia? Now, I don't know how Papua New Guinea is going to react to that.
We've got a pretty strong alliance with Papua New Guinea. I mean, we have set up, and we have worked really hard to kind of set up systems and oversight over there, mostly because we want their kind of buildy dirt or whatever
we
it is
definitely want their electrical dirt.
We've worked really hard to kind of rape and pillage all the things out of their soil that we do to ourselves.
I'm not going to say colonial, but anyway, moving on. Right, so the whole thing is, for the last couple of decades, because of the war on terror, we've focused on very small combat operations in far-flung regions, as we said.
But also the threat, though, this is really important, because the threat of military force or coercion is against Australia actually didn't or does not involve invasion.
It doesn't.
And we've seen that. We've seen that with like the trade wars. We've seen that. That's how they're going to get us. So yes, we'll wax lyrical about how much defense we need. We do need defense, and it's more about posturing than defending.
Now that's a really good word you used just then, posturing.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is the whole thing. What is our posture right now? Our posture is
pretty bad.
America wants, terrible bad. Australia, go and see a chiropractor. Get that, a little bit of Pilates might help.
Yeah.
Right. Our posture is terrible at the moment. And also the fact that the arms of our defence, so Army, Navy, Air Force, don't interlink correctly.
No.
Right. Now, going through that, the big winner in this is going to be the Navy, right?
Which makes absolute sense to me.
We're an island.
Yes.
Admittedly, a very big island, but we're still an island.
Yes.
One of the things that came up, and it was really interesting, was that we've now got our surface fleet review is taking place. And, mate, the whole surface fleet review, interestingly enough, you look at all these commentators, I think it was Andrew Bolton who went, we've had a review and now we're having another review. It's like, well, we've now spotted what's wrong. Now we need to work out how to fix it.
Yeah.
That requires a review. The interesting thing is the admiral, the ex-US admiral who's running this review, he has in the last, I think it's 10 years, made $7 million out of the Australian government doing naval reviews, right?
That's insane.
That's a lot. This guy charges $7,000 a day.
Pretty much every government loves a review, let's be real.
But again, this comes back to this problem with the Australian Defence Force, is it's so privately owned.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much private corporate work in it. There's contracting. And the problem with that is, it was the classic thing when I worked at ASIO. One guy left ASIO, resigned from ASIO, and then came back to do a review on ASIO as a contractor.
And made way more money.
On 4 times the amount of money. I know.
And that's the thing that what happens when you go private. All of a sudden you can't control the costings of things, and you're up to kind of like whatever the businesses want to charge you.
Yeah, as soon as you start outsourcing, you start losing money. And the thing is, there is so much money in defence. Like, we're paying billions upon billions of dollars in defence.
Yes.
But what have we got to show for it? We've got a surface fleet that is too small and not fit for purpose. Yeah. We've got an army that's getting... their armoured vehicles. The interesting thing was we were meant to get another 500 armoured vehicles. The problem with those armoured vehicles is they're too heavy for most of the bridges in Australia. So at the top end anyway, so you couldn't really use them. So we're not going to buy the fighting vehicles, but we're still going to buy the Abrams tanks, which are even heavier. And Australia has not deployed a tank in combat since, I think, either Korea or World War II.
I know. It's like, what do we got? Unless we're keeping the tanks for, something going wrong in Sydney or something. I don't know. Like for internal conflict, I don't know.
So Shadow Minister for the Defence, Andrew Hastie, who is ex-Army as well, he's ex-SAS, he basically turned around and said, the problem we've got is getting rid of all the fighting vehicles is, not so much getting rid of them as not getting them, right, is when you have literal combat, and we'll get onto this in a moment, when you take over an area, you need the support of a platform with a 30mm cannon.
Yeah.
That was what our fighting vehicles are. We're not going to get them anymore. But we'll have Abrams tanks, which you probably couldn't get into that theatre of operation, right? So the other thing with the Navy that I think is a really good thing, and it's been overlooked for, 40, nearly 50 years, is we're going to have a huge uptick in domestic manufacturing of naval assets. Shipbuilding. We're an island. We should be building our own ships. We keep buying stuff from Spain and from France and from the US and the UK, and half the time the stuff we buy from Spain, that's like the light rail in Sydney. Half the time it doesn't bloody work.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to buy things that are fit for purpose. Instead of buying them off someone else, how about we dig deep and start as a nation building it ourselves? And then you know what the great thing is? If we design something that everyone goes, geez, that's a really cool boat, right? We like that ship. That's cool. They'll buy them off us. And then again, we've got more. It's an economic thing. Now, with the Army is being pivoted into being a more literal or amphibious force, right?
Okay.
So instead of having them all just running around the top end, waiting for the armies that are never going to appear, we're going to teach them how to get on and off boats on beaches. Right?
Okay.
And it's an important thing because if we do, it's all about force.
Like Normandy?
No, not quite. More like,
Or a bit better than
Iwo Jima and Guam and Guadalcanal. Right. If you go back to all those classic American movies of, Marines landing on the beaches in the Pacific.
Yeah.
That's our theatre of war that is our area
Storming
of
the beaches.
Is storming the beaches. Right. Now, the whole thing about that is, again, we have the ability to do it, but we're not geared up for it.
Yeah.
So the big thing for the Army is they want to pivot that way, but also they want to harden the northern bases, right? Really do some work on all of these northern bases on the West Australian coast, up in Arnhem Land and across on Cape York. They want to harden those, not just for the Army, but also for the Air Force. They want to get a bit more solid gear going in there. So if somebody does fire a missile at it, we can still launch a plane off the runway. The planes will be in hardened bunkers so they don't get destroyed. And, of course, the soldiers can deploy from there as well.
Yes, and because of that, they want more long-range missile capacity. So
missiles.
We're investing in that.
Don't get me started on missiles. That's a whole little thing in itself. The other thing is the Air Force. Again, hardened bases up the top. The Fruit Bat is a go.
Oh, wow.
The Ghost Bat.
The Ghost Bat, not the Fruit Bat?
The Ghost Bat drone. I call it the Fruit Bat because I just think, as someone said, Ghost Bat is having a wank at work.
No, it's not, isn't it? Didn't I look this up and it was like...
It is.
Okay.
One of the definitions in the Urban Dictionary.
Keep going.
Right up there with the Oxford Dictionary for its credibility. Right, so... That drone is a go. They're going to start producing those drones. We aren't going to get B-21 bombers. Everyone was hoping we were going to get, they're called Raiders.
I love that.
And they're the big stealth bombers that the Americans produced. We thought we might get some. That ain't going to happen.
Not happening.
Right. Because as you said, everything is all about the missiles.
Yes, our range for firing projectile munitions will increase from 40 kilometres to get this, a range of 300.
With the chance of it getting out to 5.
Yes.
Well, that you're talking...
That's initially a range of 300.
You're talking 300 miles, which is 500 kilometres.
300 kilometres.
No, 500 kilometres. Yeah, it's 500.
Okay.
It is. It's 300 miles or 500
what my data
kilometres.
in front of me shows me.
Anyway. Yeah, okay. Well, look,
what am I? I'm just a journalist and you're a comedian. But anyway.
I'm a comedian who reads a lot. 127 pages of declassified fun.
Great.
Right. So the whole thing is we're going to start getting these missiles that allow us to project further.
That was the initial strike range. Okay. So with the acquisition of precision strike missiles.
Prisms.
which will have ranges in excess of 500.
And it looks like they'll be able to stretch them out to 1,000.
So I was talking about the firing projectile munitions.
Yeah, projectile munitions.
Which is what I said before that.
A projectile
munition. So you don't listen to me.
I do listen.
I'm just like I'm literally your wife.
Yeah, she doesn't listen to me. You're different to my wife in that regard. Now, the whole thing is with these better missiles, and there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you've got the Joint Strike Missiles, you've got the ATACMS, which is actually the platform, and the HIMARS platform, and the PRISMs. Now, the big thing about these missiles is we used to be able to lob a missile 40 kilometres and maybe hopefully hit another ship.
I know, and I'm like thinking, when you think about it, 40 kilometres isn't really that far.
Well, it's over the horizon. It's a long way. But the other thing that we're going to do is with these particularly the Joint Strike and the PRISMs, these things, you can fire them 300, 400, 500 kilometres. They will strike within 3 metres of your designated target.
Right, that's pretty good.
So the HIMARS that we've been seeing a lot of in the UK, we're definitely getting those. Because, not the UK, sorry, in Ukraine.
Yeah.
The HIMARS, we're definitely getting those. Everybody wants the HIMARS because it's a really, really solid platform. It does the job well.
Yeah.
And because it's highly mobile, HIM, highly mobile, you can fire off a set of missiles and you're gone.
Yeah.
It's just on the back of a truck. It's like a 6-litre diesel engine that drives this thing around.
I'm excited.
It's going to be thrilling.
This is making me so happy.
Woo-hoo. Right. And that means that you can park them on the coast, pull them up on a beach, and if there's a ship, 200 kilometres away, you can drop a missile right down its funnel. Now, with that, what's very important, here's the thing that came up, space, the final frontier.
Is it the final frontier?
I think our mental state is the real final frontier. But anyway, space is being detached from Air Force. They've decided that they're going to literally detach it and make it a part of the ADF as opposed to a part of the Air Force. Now, Air Force has gone, hang on, but space, we're the guys that fly. It's like, yeah, but space isn't flying. Space is pretty much going to be satellites.
Yeah.
Do you remember Moonraker? The James Bond film.
Yes.
Where they had the space fight.
Yes.
Where they all came out and they had little laser beams on their chest and they, the Space Marines and all
Yep.
that. And America's got their own Space Force at the moment. We are definitely getting into that field. But it's literally going to be satellite combat. It's drones in orbit as opposed to drones in the air or, and we'll talk about this, drones on the water. The whole thing is, right, satellites become incredibly important in this projected or this defence posture because we can drop that missile within 3 metres as long as we've got decent satellite coverage with
100%.
GPS, right? Basically, we put an iPhone on it with Google Maps and go, want you to land there. And the missile goes up and drops down. So we need really good GPS. Now, if I was an adversary, my first thing is if I've got a satellite up there that can kill your satellites, I'm going to kill your GPS. Right, and once GPS is gone...
we're kind of screwed.
We're kind of screwed, but we do have things like LiDAR.
Yeah.
Which is LiDAR, not LiDAR. LiDAR, which is a combination of laser and radar, which gives you an incredible 3D idea of what you're looking at. So you will be able to use things like LiDAR, but bottom line is satellite technology is the one that's going to be important. And that's up there in the sky.
Yeah, and the good news, which you kind of really touched on earlier, is the kind of more of a focus for the rapid establishment of domestic manufacturing. So these missiles, we want to kind of like what that means is jobs.
Well, the other thing about the missiles is because of Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russian situation, there aren't a lot of missiles available at the moment.
No, I would imagine there wouldn't be.
America has pretty much exhausted its reserve and it's currently dipping into its combat-ready stuff to supply Zelensky. Now, in that, they've now upped, I think they've doubled production of missiles, but they've got a lot of customers at the moment. Everybody wants to buy the American missiles because they're proving their worth, so everybody wants them. Right now, if everybody wants them, wouldn't it be better if we, under license, got someone to build them here?
Well, it makes absolute sense. Why wouldn't you build something that you see that there's an absolute gap in the market? So why don't you just fill that gap? I mean, if we're going to start building, nuclear submarines and all this other stuff, manufacturing jobs, both, it's a bipartisan issue. You can guarantee that both sides of government will back this. So I think it's kind of a win-win.
It's a big win-win. Now, the other thing about, as you said, when you sort of talked about building our missiles, the other thing about that, and this comes down to the fuel reserve. Now, this is a really, really important point here that was made. We have 27 days, I think. We were meant to have 90.
Yes.
We should have 90 days worth of petrol in the country. We've got about 27 days, right?
So this is one of the 13 recommendations that were kind of agreed on only in principle, right? Yep. So they include an East Coast facility for nuclear submarines, the location of which will only be decided late in the decade, a fuel council to deliver a resilient national fuel supply, a centralized space domain capability and a trained defense space workforce, and integrating long-range anti-ship missiles on the F-35A.
Yeah, right. So again, Air Force are going to get upgraded missiles, better stuff to take out. Because that is the thing. The surface fleets are going to be like victim number one. If a war broke out, your surface fleet is the one that's going to probably take the hits first. Right. Your submarines are the ones that are going to be hiding under there, and probably your submarines are going to be the ones doing a lot of the hitting. And with Australia, because literally Australia, this big flat continent, if we can get our planes up in the air, God help you if you've got a boat out there. If you're in a ship and we've got a nicely guided missile that can, again, plug a hole in your hull, we're going to put you to the bottom of the ocean before you get anywhere near the coast.
Yes.
So
look, they're put in the kind of the not yet too hard basket, and the government's committed to the $19 billion, but they've said $19 billion, but there's going to be $7.8 billion of cuts. So that's
it's not so much cuts, it's
going to be reprioritized. Right. So that means that there's going to be a reduction in, as we spoke about, the land combat vehicles. So they're looking at going from 450 to 129. Yeah, it was quite a drop.
Yeah, which is basically they've gone from 3 combat groups to 1. I think it's 3 divisions. I'm not sure. I remember, again, it was something Andrew Hastie brought up where he said we've gone from having, I think it's 3 battalions to 1.
So the 2nd Regiment of Army self-propelled howitzers will be cancelled immediately. 6 defence projects are apparently going to be cancelled, and 6 will be delayed and 21 will be rescoped. Yeah,
look, here's the thing, again.
It makes sense.
Defence has a lot of, there are a lot of people with their own agenda in there.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people that are getting kickbacks in there as well. And
100%.
they want that project, they want those projects moving because it's good for them personally.
Yes.
Not necessarily good for the Australian people or our defence. The interesting one was cyber.
Yeah, cyber.
One page.
Yeah, I know.
One page. Basically went because
it's kind of already being handled.
We're already in the game.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
And the other thing they were looking at is also, climate change.
Which is a huge issue because a lot of our allies in the Pacific have the problem of they won't be countries anymore. They will be. They are doing they're literally the opposite of what China has done. They're disappearing while China are building islands.
Yes.
These islands are sinking.
Yes, and what's interesting is a lot of people get very confused about when you mix in kind of climate change with defense strategy. But these people who are losing these countries are going to be looking for somewhere to go.
Yeah.
I mean, this makes absolute sense that this is something we need to put on our radar.
Yeah, right. Now, I just wanted to jump back to the fuel reserve. Because
the fuel reserves are kind of a really interesting one.
Well, the important thing to remember about this is
because sorry to interrupt you, because it was always is it necessary? Do we need? And is it dangerous that we don't have that much fuel? How bad is it?
Well, we had 2 refineries shut down. I mean, if you look down to Kurnell in Sydney, as you fly out of Sydney to go to, on one of your weekends with the girls in Melbourne or whatever you want, look down at Kurnell. It's a lot of storage areas, but the refinery is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So we've lost our refinery. So most of and here's the other thing you've got to remember. Most of our fuel comes from India, the Philippines, Japan. Right. See, all the people that if something happened in the South China Sea
we'd be screwed.
Screwed, right? We could probably, and that's the other thing, when everyone goes, why Indo-Pacific? What do we care about the Indian Ocean? Because if we want to get it out of the Gulf, that's where it's going to come from.
It's our trade route.
Right, it's a trade route.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem we have in Australia. There's not really that much oil around.
No.
We produce a little bit of oil.
Can't we just start trading it?
When do you mean trading it?
You can have some of my gas or my buildy dirt, and I'll take some of your oil.
Well, that's what trade is. We do that, but the problem we have is
we have companies that sell it to the highest bidder and make a shit ton of cash while the taxpayers has to overpay for their gas.
Norway. The Norway Future Fund is a classic example where and it was an interesting point where everyone so many people in the Australian government said we can't charge them that much for their profits because my God, they'll never mind. They won't dig it up. And the president of Norway went, we charge them 75% tax on their profit. And, wow, they're still digging up that oil because they want the oil.
Yeah.
Right? Oil is a finite resource, and if we've got it, like gas they're all finite resources ultimately. Like the only one on this planet that's probably not, it isn't finite would be something like steel because it's like iron is everywhere.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is
helium, though. I'm really concerned about the helium.
no more party balloons for
I
you,
know.
young lady.
It's really stressing me out.
Oh, don't panic. Don't panic. We'll figure out a way.
Yeah.
Now, all you need, literally, if you want helium, you just need a fusion reactor. Like the sun produces tons of helium.
Yeah, fusion reactor.
Mine the sun for helium.
Easy.
Right. So when it comes to the fuel reserve, I mean, we had the fuel reserve that Angus Taylor bought and then left it in America. That's actually gone.
What?
It was quietly sold.
What?
Someone quietly sold it last year.
Who quietly sold it?
The government that's currently in. Because we can't use it. It's sitting there in a tank in the US.
I thought we were meant to put fuel in it.
No, we bought the fuel, right?
And now the fuel's gone.
Well, basically, a strategic
So
reserve.
our fuel reserve is gone.
Well, no. Basically, what we've done is we went, hang on. Well, petrol is worth a lot of money at the moment. I think this is because this is a quiet thing. And look, I'm going to have to double check this, but I've heard it from several sources. But I will double check, and if I'm wrong, I will put an apology on our Twitter feed at @iSpied_podcast.
At @iSpied_podcast.
Right? Did you notice I took my time that time and you go at @iSpied_podcast? I went at
I know.
@iSpied_podcast.
I like that better. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So I'm a voice artist. I should do that correctly.
You should be able to pronounce things correctly.
But this is my show, and I talk in my way this time. This is my real voice.
Your show.
Studio
anyway.
wife is. This is our show, but I'll talk.
Excuse me, I'm just going to go now.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump out this window.
Yeah, okay,
right.
go.
Anyway, the thing about that is if we're going to have a strategic reserve, it needs to be where we can get to it.
It needs to be strategic.
Yeah, if it's on the other side of the biggest ocean on the planet. Not very strategic. That could get sunk really easy unless we can build a submarine that's also a fuel tanker. I think it'd be great just to have a bloke sort of just pull up. Yeah, here you go, and here's your fuel. Out comes the boat and it goes. Right, so that fuel reserve is going to be an important thing to think of. Now, again, the argument could be made, all right, everyone, stop driving petrol cars, get into your electric cars. We need that petrol for other purposes, for military purposes. The big thing that also came out of this, I found it really interesting, was the fact that our lead time for anything is now shot.
What do you mean?
Well, if China started a build-up, to go, okay, let's invade Australia. Screw it. Let's go. We own it, but let's go and have a look at it. Let's go and look at our investment and put some troops there to protect it. Our lead time for that, like to build a force up to do that, it's going to take a bit of time. But like the thing that we keep getting from a lot of the hawks in the commentary field, so people like Peter Harcher, these guys and Greg Sheridan are all like going, war is going to break out in 3 years.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen.
Well, even if it does, it means nothing to us.
Also, cyber war has already started. So I don't know where you've been, but there has been war waging.
Yeah, but that's on
the internet.
That's the thing that everyone keeps talking about is our force is very much geared for asymmetric warfare, right? So we're a small force going up against large forces. So we're going to get inside your threat envelope and then really mess you up.
Yeah.
Right. We can't think like that anymore because if we're going to protect our interests, and most of our interests are trade, right? That's the really big thing we've got to look out for. We've got to be able to project our force outward to be able to defend the corridors that come into Australia. We're not talking about the coastline anymore. We're talking about the Straits of Malacca. We're talking about all of the straits that come through the archipelago of Indonesia.
It's a big job. Requires big responsibility.
Job.
I know.
There's a lot of work to be done.
So outside of all this, out of this strategic review, Australia's Defence Force will now have 5 jobs. Let's quickly just run over them.
Yeah.
Defending the nation. Tick. Deterring adversaries through denial.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't believe you're an adversary. I deny your argument. Yeah, denial of access. Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly from projecting force against Australia from its northern approaches, which we've just spoken about. Protecting our economic connection with the region and the world.
Again,
that's
trade.
Routes. So, and that was a big one, particularly with China.
Yeah.
Collective security of the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we know all of this stuff, but it's just good. I don't think that the last strategic review really took a lot of that stuff seriously.
That was a white paper that came out. Now, the interesting thing, again, this is something to talk about as well, is the fact that what's gone on in the last decade with the Conservative government we had that was so unveiled in its own internal ructions that it actually dropped the ball on what it was meant to be doing.
100%.
globally
No doubt.
and also regionally. And at the moment, we have a government that seems to be a lot more in tune with what's required to sustain the relationship.
Because we've got Penny Wong. She's not fucking around.
No one fucks with Penny Wong.
And
except Mrs. Wong, and you know what? That's her prerogative, and we're not commenting.
And the final one, the maintenance of the international rules-based order.
Here's the thing. Now, a couple of things about that is we have pretty much welded ourselves to the United States. And I only have one really big concern about that is what if we get another Donald Trump or, say, a Ron DeSantis?
Well, we're not going to get Ron DeSantis. He's polling very poorly. If anything, Donald Trump will be the Republican candidate, unless, of course, Tucker Carlson puts his hand up, which has been spoken about now that he no longer has a show and he has the MAGA base. So that could also be a very real possibility. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and thank you for putting it out there. But here's the thing: if we do get a more conservative, a more insular president in the United States, they could turn around and go, "Well, screw this deal. I didn't sign it. I don't care about it anymore."
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, if Australia went, but, literally he could go, and America can go, what are you going to do? We're not going to give you the subs. We're not going to give you the plans for those missiles. We're not going to give you anything. You're on your own. We don't care anymore. It's all about us now. Now, the problem, that was the thing. Interestingly enough, it was Obama that made the pivot to Asia.
Yep.
Right. And that's when we started getting Marines up in Darwin.
Yep.
Right. Then Trump sort of, let's be honest, Trump was really there for Trump. He wasn't there for the United States or anybody else. He was just there for himself.
He did do some things that actually worked, though. Like he wasn't all bad. Like he did do some things that actually worked. And just like Obama isn't like the great savior that a lot of people like to make him out.
Oh, he made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
More drone attacks under Obama than any other president.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So there was that sort of thing. But I always find it interesting when people say he did a lot of Trump did some good things. At the moment, the MAGA Republicans are talking about how Biden's completely dropped the ball on Afghanistan. That actually started under Trump.
No, I know, and I understand that. I mean, they're
in.
just trying to get him. The only thing they're going to get Biden on is the fact that he should retire.
He's just old.
He's too old.
But God, every time he puts those sunglasses on, you go, "You are a cool granddad."
You are cool, but it's like running for another term is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and at the moment, unfortunately, the Democrats don't really have anyone in their pocket that they can put up.
No, but mark my words. Let's see what Tucker Carlson does.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that is so scary.
A man in a bow tie. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, a man in a bow tie who looks like a dog that's being shown a card trick.
A conservative man. But you know what? He's smart and he's popular and he has the MAGA base and he has probably staunch Republicans. Republicans who are looking for someone to support because Donald Trump is in all kinds of legal troubles and Ron DeSantis is not doing very well at all.
No, I mean, particularly when you look at the policies that he's invoked in
in Florida.
In Florida, it's like, dude, the handmaid's.
I know. You can only have an abortion before you find out you're pregnant.
And what's the other thing is everyone has to show their genitals before they get on the playing field. It's like, dude, it's The Handmaid's Tale was not a rule book.
You can only have an abortion before 6 weeks. No one knows they're pregnant before 6 weeks. It's impossible.
I didn't know I was pregnant.
All right, are you trying to tell me something?
No.
Anyway, let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up. Right, so the bottom line is the really big thing that they've done, and I think it's a really, really smart move. Good on you, Angus and
this is
Steve.
great.
One of the really important things they've said is we need to have a biennial review.
Yep.
Every 2 years, we need to sit down, we need to look at the ADF, and we need to go, what the fuck is going on
100%. It should have been done.
And also the other thing they've said, and they've belled the cat, the really big cat that needed to be belled is defence procurement is a freaking disaster at the moment.
Yeah.
We aren't getting what we need. And look, it's been 20 years since we said we need new submarines, and we still don't have one
them
in the water.
And I think it's because successive governments have tried not to spend money on defence.
One, they've tried not to spend money on defence. Two, it comes back to my my little analogy at the beginning of the show, the multi-tool.
Yep.
Right? They're trying to create one object that is going to fit everybody's purpose, right? You can't do that. You can't find the perfect solution for everyone's problem. You solve the problem. If you want to solve the problem of having a knife, a fork and a spoon, buy a knife, a fork and a spoon, all right? So
separately. So we finally got back to the answer of what...
Why?
We have come full fucking circle.
Yeah. Why? Yeah, you sat there the entire time looking at me like Tucker Carlson going, why are you talking about a pocket knife?
Yeah.
Right, we don't want a pocket knife. The F-35
Or get the Swiss Army.
The Swiss Army, right. Really good, actually.
Yeah.
Now, the whole thing is, look at something like the F-35 strike fighter. Basically, it's been designed to satisfy everyone's needs, but it's not going to do that because if you compromise to make sure that it's a really good air combat aircraft, you're going to lose on your strafing capability and your bombing capability.
Yep.
But if you try to up one, you're going to drop the other. So you wind up with a hodgepodge kind of aircraft instead of an aircraft that does the job, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to fight, get an F-16, an F-18 or an F-22. If you want a strafer, go and get yourself an A-10 Warthog. Those things rocked the planet.
Yeah.
They were absolutely massive in Iraq, right? So you get the right item for the job, right? Get the right tool. We don't need a multi-tool. We need a toolbox.
Yep.
That was my analogy. I was really proud.
Okay, we done now?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.